So I'm going to try to do this using this tool to make a short video. I will also put this article up on Canvas on the timeline. But I want you to start by looking, first of all, look here, if you will, at the title of this article. Right away, oftentimes when there is a colon, a subtitle, what it tells you is that there's kind of a catchy title, and then what is this about? So the catchy title, saving the last for best, you kind of an intuitive thing is saving the best for last, but here we're saying saving the last for best. But then the second part of the title really tells you something about what this article is about, a positivity bias for end experiences. Now, I want you to look here. This is a short report. That means that there is no abstract, and you'll see this is really just 2 pages. So you're going to see that this is a very quick article, but it will serve the purposes of what we want to do today. So the first thing I want to point out to you is that when you are reading an article, one of the things that you should do is that you should try very hard to circle, if you will, any words that you're unfamiliar with. So here I've circled the word salient endings. What does that mean? If you don't know what salient endings mean, you're going to struggle with this entire article. So you don't have to look it up immediately, but as you're reading an article, every time there's a term or a word that's repeated, and you'll see this is repeated over and over, and you're not familiar with it, then what you should do is you should look them up so that you know what it means. Now, I also want to point out to you here, you'll see throughout this introduction, even though it's less than a page long, you have a number of references. And what I want to point out to you about these references, which are all listed on the reference page, is that it isn't one reference per paragraph. For example, up here you'll see that they're talking about different examples of the idea of the positivity bias for end experiences. And so they take the same concepts and they apply them in one paragraph, even though it references different sources. And when you're writing your introduction, that's something that's very important. You organize your introduction by topics, the paragraphs. Each paragraph is a topic or a particular piece of evidence, but there may be multiple sources that support that particular evidence. So now I want to move down to the end of the introduction, and what do we find? You'll see right here, it says, we predicted. That gives you the clue that this then, I'll leave that right there, that this then is in fact, I don't know, I know what I need to do here. Okay. You'll see here, if I can get this to work again, that what we're finding is this then is the hypothesis. We predicted that when the last chocolate was made salient, there it is again, it would be more enjoyable and it would taste better than the other chocolates, irrespective of flavor. We also predicted, this tells us that there's a second hypothesis here. So that's important. Traditionally, you're going to find the hypothesis at the end of the introduction. We move on to the method, and the first thing that's here is information about the participants. And this is very important because we can make some generalizations, or we can't make generalizations based on the information there. Now you'll see, because this is a short report, all of the areas of the method, the participants, followed by here are the, if you will, the materials. The materials in this case are chocolates. And then finally, the procedure itself. Again, they're not labeled as such, but they're all right there in a row. The other thing I want you to notice is that here it talks about a manipulation check. Do you know what a manipulation check is? If you don't know what it is, that's another thing that you need to look up, if you will. Then we come to the results, and the results are really the statistical analysis, and you can see that just by taking an eyeball at that, followed by the discussion. Now, the discussion is interpreting the results. It's telling you in a narrative, here are what the findings were. And from this, you can decide whether or not the hypothesis was supported or not. It then goes on to talk about other implications, limitations, and finally, future research. The last thing I want to show you is here you have a chart, a graph, a figure, and this chart should tell you immediately by looking at it, you should be able to identify the independent variable, next or last condition, the dependent variable, enjoyment of the chocolates, and the results. You can see right here that based on this figure, that in the last case, when the person knew that this was the last chocolate, when the fact that it was last was made salient, then it was preferred. And you can see it's a significantly more enjoyment in that case. The last thing we have here are the references. And again, I want to point out to you that when you're looking at these references within an article that you're interested in are valuable, but you need to go to the primary source, to this original article, because that's when you can use that as a reference in your paper.